Welcome back to another episode of the Quarter Life Clarity Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Valeriano, and today we're talking about money. Not necessarily the X's and O's of money. Go back to episode 6 if you want to hear about that. Today we're talking about more of the foundation. It's like our beliefs, our personality, knowing who you are, and how that affects our relationship with money and our behaviors and habits surrounding our finances. Today's guest is Linda Grizely. She is a former financial advisor. She spent most of her life financial advising and recently decided to pivot to start her own business and educate and advise and talk about everything that you're going to hear in this conversation today. The chapters of this episode, because I don't really trust Spotify or wherever you're listening to this on to give you the right ones, those are we start off with who Linda is and kind of the human behind the expert and how she got into this whole thing, where we get our beliefs about money, the 4 types of money scripts, the importance of knowing who you are with your money, but not even just with your money, the 5 money personalities, Linda's me money concept, and about halfway through we get into, my money personality, and Linda kind of coaches me through like how based on my situation, I should be thinking about money, and you guys kind of get a little glimpse in terms of my life and my situation with money. So, yeah, appreciate you guys being here and enjoy the rest of the episode. All right. Today we have Linda on. Linda, thank you for joining us. We're talking about finances. I love these conversations because I literally just get to sit here and get educated myself. So, Linda, before we start, can you tell us, a little bit about yourself, kind of what you do? You're an expert in this conversation, but before we get into all that, I love to get to know the human behind the expert first.
Wow. So I'm a financial planner, but I've stopped doing financial planning. So I'm actually just doing financial education now. So my whole goal is to impact a greater number of people. I was helping people through financial planning, but my goal now is to help just a broader number of people in teaching them about finance and giving them a safe space where they can come and learn about money and learn about finances and all the good things that they can do. But tying in their mindset and the psychology behind it, because to me that's the biggest part, is understanding like what your relationship is with money and how you feel and think about money. So that's a big part of who I am, because I really love to help people and empower people. But otherwise, I'm a mom. I've got a blended family, so my husband and I have 5 adult children between us. 3 of them are mine, and we've got 2 grandkids. We live in Northern Illinois, and I'm really just a suburban woman who's trying to make a difference in the world.
Let's go. Awesome. Yeah, I think when we spoke a couple weeks ago, how old are your kids? Your kids are kind of in this quarter life age, are they not? At least a couple of them.
Yeah, my youngest 2 are, well, one of them will be 24 here in a couple of weeks, and the other one will be 26 in a couple of months. So
Awesome.
yeah, definitely in the quarter lifers.
Yeah, yeah. So you're a parent of one of us. So yeah, I mean, can you talk a little bit too about kind of what led to the pivot for you in your career in terms of, all right, you were this financial planner, for X amount of time, and then you decided to kind of pivot to a little bit more of the psychology and coaching side of things.
So I was working for a company doing financial planning, and something happened there that made me exit, kind of unexpectedly. I mean, I did the exit, so that part was expected, but I was planning on being there for much longer than I was. And when I left, I was leaving something behind that I was like, this is not just a good fit for me. And I was like, okay, what do I do next? And I was looking into, I had had my own financial planning company before, and I also had a money mindset course when I had my own RIA, which is a registered investment advisory firm. Anyway, when I had that, I had the money mindset course. So I was leaning in and figuring out what's next. Do I reopen the RIA? Do I reopen the money mindset course? What do I want to be now? who
Mm.
who am I when I grow up now, right? So I'm just thinking this through, and I'm having all kinds of conversations and talking to people, and even applying for other jobs, and like I just felt like everything was not a good fit. Like it just, nothing was clicking. And then I started talking to people about the different ways that financial advisors get paid. So there's a bunch of different ways that they get paid. Some of them are commission only. Some of them are they get a fee and a commission. Some of them are just a fee only, and some of them are advice only.
Hmm.
And when I had my own RIA, I was advice only, which meant that I didn't handle people's money. I just taught them how to do it, but I gave them advice and they paid me for that advice. And I really enjoyed that because I felt it wasn't salesy. I mean, yes, I was still selling my services, but there wasn't anything behind me trying to have them do something with their money. Like I wasn't earning money if they bought a product from me. I wasn't earning money if they moved their money to me. And I felt like that was like a really values based decision for me to do advice only.
Hmm.
So as I'm talking through that and I'm trying to figure out where I fit, it it clicks that really the part that I loved about planning wasn't telling people what to do, but it was educating them and empowering them so that they could do things on their own or do things differently and understand it. I didn't want to talk to the people who were like, just tell me what to do. I wanted to talk to the people who were like, explain to me why and how, and really wanted to dig into like what it all meant. And so teaching them was the part that really lit me up. And that's how I decided to just lean into financial education.
Hmm.
So that's the direction that I'm headed now.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And yeah, I mean, I think that's so relatable, especially for the quarter lifer too. When were you when you kind of made that change, or how old were you when you made that change?
I made that change literally a couple months ago, and I'm 56 years old.
Let's go. That's awesome. It's never too late, right?
Yeah, never too late.
Oh
Definitely.
man, that's awesome. Well, good for you. Yeah, and I'd love to, before we really get into the, psychology of money and all that stuff, kick things off. Uh, what did no one tell you in your 20s about money that you wish you had learned then, that you've learned later in your years?
Oh gosh, so many things. I've learned so much about money. Now, I was super responsible with money too, because I actually was a teen mom. So I have a daughter also who's older than my boys who are the quarter lifers. But I mean, I was responsible with money from day one. I mean, I was filing tax returns before I was old enough to vote. I was, living within my means, not going into debt, definitely taking care of everything. But the things that I didn't know were that saving is something that you can do regardless of how much money you're making. As long as you're living within your means, you should be saving something. Start saving young because that compounding is going to be huge.
Hmm.
I really wish that I had done that better. And then the other thing is that when you live in a world of restriction, then like if you're budgeting or you're saying like, oh, I can't afford that. And I'm not saying just to go out and spend a bunch of money, but I'm saying as long, and this is where my me money method that I've created now comes in, but it's okay to spend on yourself as long as you keep it within within a bucket or intention of that. And that actually helps you understand your relationship with money and allows you to buy things and spend on things that you value rather than based on what you think you can justify. It's a really
Hmm.
different way of looking at it. So I think those two are the main things. Save and then figure out how to spend on yourself without it being a budgeting restriction.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, the foundation of this whole conversation is really our beliefs about money. And we've talked about beliefs on this podcast before, but it goes back to that with everything, not just finances, with marriage, with relationships, with career, with everything. And so, I think, can you speak on that a little bit of kind of where we get our beliefs about money and how they can impact us both positively and negatively?
Yeah, sure. So I'm not a psychologist or a therapist or anything, but my interest in this came from me working with clients in the financial planning field and seeing it started like just seeing like their own internal blockages that they had, where it's like I would be telling them something that made complete sense for them, but they just couldn't get through it in their head that this would make sense for them because of the stories they were told when they were growing up, of the things that their brother or their neighbor is doing, other things that people are telling them or things that they're telling themselves that that they just couldn't get out of their own way. And so that's where my initial was like, what is this all about? And I started like reading about money mindset and the psychology around money and just learning more about it. So the biggest thing behind it though is money is never just money. It's safety, it's freedom, it can be people's identity, their self-worth. It's all tied up in numbers. And when you think about money, it's like our breath. It's with us every moment. So even when we're sleeping, we're spending money because you're heating your home, you're cooling your home, you got your phone charging. Like you're always spending money. And hopefully you're always, working on the flow coming in too. But it's just such a big part of our lives that it's weird that we don't talk about it more, because most of us got our beliefs of money from like our experiences growing up, from our families, and we probably never even questioned it. Like in my generation, and maybe yours too, most of us grew up not even talking about money. Like it just wasn't talked about. And still don't understand. Like we've been saying for as long as I can remember, like, why don't they teach this stuff in school? And we're still not teaching it in school. So it's just bizarre because it's such a big part of our lives. So it just depends on like, did your family talk about money? Did your family argue about money? Was somebody always telling you like debt is bad, like always never having, always pay off debt, never have any debt? Then how does that make you feel when you try to go to school and you get a student loan? You feel bad. You feel bad about yourself because people always told you debt was bad. And now you're going to school and you're getting a loan and I must be a bad person. What are you telling yourself about that? So it's all this stuff that goes into every decision that you make and how you feel that you don't even realize is happening.
Yeah, it's such a good point. It reminds me, like, I think about my own experiences, and you think about beliefs, you think about where they come from. Like, you get a lot of them from your parents, like you said, the people around you, especially your parents, I think. And well, then you think about that. It's like, well, where did they get their beliefs? Well, from their parents and the people around them when they were growing up. And you could trace that cycle back like generations. And I like to say life's just one big game of telephone. And I think it is important to realize that because, yeah, like the time period that my parents grew up with or in and the struggles that they had to go through. Like my dad did not grow up in money. And so that made attaining money and getting money so much more valuable to him as he grew up. And then then he's kind of in a good way and maybe some unhealthy ways, then shed those beliefs onto me, and we'll probably talk about my beliefs on money and stuff because I took your test. But yeah, I mean, I think regardless of whether they're healthy beliefs or unhealthy beliefs about money, it's important to understand where they come from. And so if we have some of those unhealthy beliefs, how would, and maybe before we even talk about how would we unlearn some of those unhealthy beliefs, what even are some of those unhealthy beliefs?
Right. So I think there's a lot packed in there. So I think that it's like you said, like you learn from the people that you're around, and those do get passed down. So, for instance, like if you're someone who grew up like in poverty, then everybody around you is in poverty, and they might think that there might be stories in your community of people who say like, oh, money's bad and people just use it for evil. And the people that you're surrounded with in your poverty community, you know they're all going to have their feelings about money, and they're going to pass on to you. And part of that is going to be that by saying that rich people are greedy and then taking pride in living with less money, or just saying like, this is just the way we are, this helps people feel better about their situation.
Hmm.
But what it does is it perpetuates that poverty cycle, because it creates a place where this is okay to be here. It's okay to be in this poverty, and not to make more money, and not to, try to better myself. So it does continue that on. And then, there are people too that are like money worshipers, where you see people with like the flashy cars and the designer handbags and all of this stuff, and they may or may not actually have money. They just have the perception of having money, but you don't really know what their background is like what kind of debt they're in and what kind of money stress they have. Like they're trying to make them look like something, like it's a status, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they have money.
Mm.
So it's just really interesting when you dig into these things. And I think there's I think it's Brad Klontz, who's a financial psychologist, and he wrote a bunch of books, but he identified like four basic categories of money scripts, and that's what he called them, money scripts. So that's kind of what we're talking about when we talk about like the stories that you're telling yourself or that you learn. It's what's the script that's driving your life.
Do you know what those four scripts are off the top of your head?
Yeah, so I think they're money avoidance, money worship, money status, and money vigilance. So like money avoidance would be more of the poverty people that I was talking about, like they're raised in low income or disadvantaged areas, and they like money is corrupt, and that's the story that they tell themselves so that they can justify how they're living, but then it perpetuates it. And then money status might be the other one I was talking about, where their net worth is, they feel like their net worth is the measure of their value or their self-worth, so that's where they're trying to have the social status and they're flaunting their wealth. And it could be just even keeping up with the Joneses, like your neighbor gets something new so you get something new. And then those people are more likely to have debt, and have like really poor financial habits even though they look like they do, like they have it together. And then the other two were what? Money worship and money vigilance. So money
Mhm.
worship is where somebody thinks that money will solve all their problems and that it will bring them fulfillment. So this things that people might do is like they might overspend thinking that having things will make them feel better. Like I've known people who have been in not so great relationships who buy a new house with someone that they know they're not having a great relationship with, but they somehow feel like, well, if we move into the new house, things will be easier, things will be better because we'll have this better house, right? But that's not going to make them feel better because the relationship is still the same and money is not solving the problem.
Hmm.
And then money vigilance would be like more of a cautious or prudent approach, like just being like overly attentive to your finances. So being too future and planning oriented, like, budgeting too carefully and not enjoying your life now, right? So yeah, you might have a higher net worth because you're saving money. I mean, how many times have we heard stories about people who passed away and they all of a sudden like they've got millions of dollars in the bank, and they lived in poverty, or their house was debilitating because they weren't taking care of it, yet they had all this money
Hmm.
because they were these frugal people that liked that squirreled it all away but didn't take care of themselves. So what kind of life are they leading by choosing to be too money vigilant? So I think that those are the four that he identified, but I think that you can be a combination of them,
Hmm.
and you could be sometimes in parts of your life one or another. But the idea is that if you understand more about you, whether it be one of these scripts that I'm talking about here that he identified, or whether it be a money personality like the quiz that you took,
Hmm.
right? It just understanding like what goes behind your thoughts around money is what's really going to start you in making better choices and understanding like what you're doing and why you're doing it.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I appreciate you going through that because, yeah, I mean, I personally, a few years ago, I consumed every piece of self-help, personal development thing out there. And it was great for a little while. And then in the past year, I've pretty much gotten rid of all of it because there's so much information out there. And I feel like I've seen so much conflict in terms of, well, some people say this is right, and then some people say this is right. And I just don't know. I don't know who to trust. And so I feel like to bring it back to, what you just said and what we're talking about, I've found checking down to just the importance of knowing who you are and having that self-awareness of one, no matter which one of those four you are, just knowing that is huge. And then you can make adjustments based on that. But yeah, I think just knowing who you are, is so, so critical just in taking in this information, any information that's out there. And again, personally, I've just been like, all right, well, maybe that's right, but I don't know, is it right for me? And I think that applies to everything that we're talking about here too. Um,
It does, Brian. And I love that question because that's the piece that I bring into my financial education is it right for me? And that's why the personality part to me is so important because there's no wrong money personality. So I call it a quiz. You called it a test, but
yeah.
really it's just it's just an assessment that helps you realize where you're at. But there's no pass fail, there's no wrong answer. Whatever you are, and understanding that is going to help you decide what's right for you. It's like saying one person says this and the other person says another thing, and you're saying they're contradicting each other. But that's because there's no one right answer because
Mm,
it's going to be different for every person. And that's why it's so important to understand who you are,
mm,
right? Because one person can say, oh yeah, I use credit cards all the time. I build up points, I use points, I get rewards, I blah blah blah, I do all this stuff. And yeah, they're probably great at doing that, and they hopefully they pay it off every month. But another person might be like, I know me, and if I have a credit card, I'm going to spend that and I'm going to rack up that debt and it's going to be detrimental to me.
mm,
So when you say, yeah, go out and get some credit cards and do this, like if you don't understand yourself and know that you're that person that's going to screw that up, you got
mm.
to know yourself, right? And know,
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's not for me.
Yeah. No, it's such a good point. And that kind of leads us into, right, like I want to talk about the money personality thing. So to shed some light on what Linda and I are talking about in terms of the quiz. Yeah, like I on Linda's website, and I'll put her website and everything in the show notes. Um, there's a couple quizzes on there, super quick. It took me probably like 2 minutes, but one of them is a money personality. And before we get into my results and stuff like that, can you shed some light on just what the money personalities are?
Yeah. So I didn't create these necessarily. If you look up money personalities, they're all over the internet and people call them different things. So I don't want to say that I created these, but the four that I identified that I use are the spender, the saver, the avoider, the risk taker, and the security seeker. And again, I want to tell you that there is no wrong answer. There's no wrong result. There's no bad result. The idea is that you are who you are, and you need to work with who you are to understand how you interact with money.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, can you, I mean, maybe we can start with mine. And
Okay.
then I would love to go through like a little bit of an explanation of each personality. So mine was the avoider, and what the result spit out was you don't like to think about money. It's complicated, boring, or stressful. You're easygoing, relationship focused, and rarely let money define your choices. And that is absolutely spot on. And it's interesting because that, kind of what we're talking about, I think the who you are conversation, that was not always how I was. That's kind of who I am based on the season that I'm in. And the season that I'm in right now is entrepreneur, trying to build something, trying to build a business. There's not much money at all coming in the door right now. And because of that, because of the circumstances, I think that has led me to just the fact that like I don't like to think about money. I wouldn't say it's necessarily complicated or boring, but it can be stressful for me because, I guess to shed a little bit more light, like I went to school for engineering, parents paid for school, so blessed for that. So didn't have student loans coming out of college, and then got a great job, almost making six figures out of college, lived at home for a couple years, saved just a bunch of money, and did that for 3 years and then was part time there for like another year. Anyways, my point being, I saved a lot of money and that was great. And now, a couple of years being into trying to build a business, the stress has just increased the more you don't build a business. and have more of that money inflow. But I mean, I think I kind of like to just control what I can control. And what are the things that I can control about potentially making money? Like, that's not my goal, but well, making a great business is going to yield those financial results. So I feel like that maybe shed some light on a little bit of like, I just feel like it's not necessarily like all in my control. It's like a result of making a good product that is a successful business. Does that like make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah. Yeah. And you're right. Your money personality will change depending on what season you're in. And I mean, it could be 2 months from now, it could be something different based on where you're at. You know, if you start bringing in good money, then maybe you won't be avoiding it anymore.
Hmm.
Maybe you'll move to spender, or maybe you'll move to saver, or maybe you'll move to security seeker because you're like, okay, I don't want to waste what I'm bringing in. It just is going to depend on where you're at.
Hmm.
But if you don't mind me digging a little bit deeper and asking you, I mean, you can definitely refuse to answer the question,
Let's do it.
but how are you spending money on yourself during this phase of your life right now, where you're basically spending down your savings that
Hmm.
that you saved up while you were working at a secure job? Now you're have this entrepreneurial spirit and you're moving forward.
Hmm.
What are you spending on yourself, not your business?
It's a great question. It's not a whole lot. Like I've definitely gotten more frugal, and I was already frugal before. Um,
And you don't
but
have to give me a number. It's more that's what I was looking for. Like,
yeah,
so you're being frugal. And
I d-
when you say frugal, tell me what that means to you.
it means not spending money on many things outside of what I know I need.
Okay. And how does that make you feel?
Uh, I think I think it priority number one for me is the business, and especially being like 2+ years into not having created a successful business, I think at this point it's almost like a necessary sacrifice. That's kind of maybe how I spin it to myself of, the runway is getting shorter in terms of, hey, like make this work. And so, how does it make me feel? I think definitely it does suck plenty of times when there is something that I do want to spend money on. And most of those things are like experiences. I say no to more things with my friends because, I spin it as, right, a necessary sacrifice. And I called 2025 the year of sacrifice for me. So all this stuff has kind of been ramped up. So there's a lot going on there, but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
a split. I think for sometimes it's like, yeah, this really blows that, I can't spend money on a lot of the things I do want to do, but I kind of excuse it by saying, well, it is just temporary. It's not forever. It is just a season.
Right. Right. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate your
Yeah.
willingness to be vulnerable about that in this conversation.
Hmm.
The reason why I ask is because, my whole concept of me money, which we haven't really talked about yet, but I want to, if you don't mind if I bring that into
Yeah,
the
let's do it.
conversation now. So one of the things that the quiz does is it gives you your description, but then it also gives you the insight on how me money can help you. Now, me money is setting aside an amount, and everybody's amount is going to be different, of money that you allow yourself to spend on yourself. So like right now, if you don't have a container for that, like you don't have it set aside separately and say, this is what I'm allowed to spend, you're having to go through a conscious decision, or maybe even not a conscious decision, but on each thing that somebody asks you to do. Like your friends say, hey, can you do this? You're like, oh, I can't. Right. But if you have the money already set aside and you already give yourself permission to spend that, and you set it aside, like, let's say you give yourself a certain amount a month. You say, this is what I'm allowed to spend in a month. But if I don't spend it all, then I save that part of it. And when a friend asks me, can I do something? It's already there. So you don't have to give yourself permission for it because you already said it was okay. How would that make you feel?
Hmm. Probably better because I'm setting it aside because yeah, I think that's probably one of my issues is like it's all just a big clump of money.
right?
Um, I think I feel like I can't do that because everything is a loss right now. You know what I mean? Like I not a whole lot of money coming in like at all. And so I think because of that fact, I see every one of those fun things or that me money as one step closer to, you know, business not working and I got to go back to a 9 to 5 and all that stuff. I think there's probably some inner work that needs to be done there. But like it's just that it's a whole lot going on. Does that make
It
sense?
is. It is, Brian. And I'm telling you right now, like I feel the same thing.
Yeah.
I feel absolutely the same exact thing that you feel. So it's not your age, it's not whatever, it's just the season that you're in. Because I'm doing the same thing. I just left a corporate job where I had a nice salary and now I'm building something. And I'm like, my husband has mandatory retirement in a year. And I'm like, I gotta launch this thing.
Yeah.
So I 100% understand you. But the one thing, not the one thing, but one of the things that I would, if I was going to tell you or any person who's launching their business, is that self-care is super important. And and having the permission to do something for yourself is big, because you don't want to lose that relationship with your friends. You don't want them to stop calling. You don't want them to stop saying, "Hey, Brian, do you want to go?" Because you always say no, right?
Mm.
And you don't want to say no. And I'm not saying go out and spend a ton of money. I'm saying figure out what you would allow yourself the permission to spend, whether it's monthly or however what you want to do it. Set it aside. That doesn't mean you have to spend it. Like I said, if you don't spend it one month, you get to save it. And then when something better comes along, you're able to say, yes, I'm going to do it. Right.
Mm.
I don't know what your things are, but let's say it's music or a concert or something.
Mhm.
Right. Those are expensive these days. I mean, I paid, like $12 to see Van Halen back in the 80s. It's not like that anymore. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I don't
Yeah.
know why I mentioned them, but
That's awesome.
but like it's definitely not the same. But the idea is that if that's your thing, and I don't know if it is or not because I don't know you at all, but
No, it is literally one of my best friends asked me to go to a concert yesterday. And
okay,
I did say yes because I really want to go. So I feel like that's how I make decisions of like, do I really want to do it? And it was like six tickets are like $60. It's one of my friends that I don't see a ton. So I feel like I have these like guidelines that they're not explicit, but I
yeah,
have them like, do I really want to? Or it's really, I feel like that's what it comes down to for me. Do I really want to go? Because I have the money, I still have plenty of savings, but it's like that sacrifice, like you can't spend it all. Sorry to like interrupt your whole spiel there,
oh
but
no, no, you're definitely you're adding value to this conversation. Definitely, you are not interrupting. But I think that's my point. Is like is you're already doing part of that because you're deciding because of the situation that you're in, which a lot of people your age are not in that situation.
yeah.
They're not, but you're already placing value on your money. You're saying, is this worthy of my money? Right. And in this case, you're saying, yes, this is worthy of my money because of the reasons you just mentioned. And for and so you're already doing a part of that, like in deciding like how to spend your me money, even though it's all in one bucket, right? But for someone else, let's say you're back to you who had the salary. Like, were you being that intentional with your money, or were you just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go do everything? Or were you saying like, is this worth me spending my money on, or would I rather save this and spend it on something better later?
Yeah, I think I was definitely more, I was still pretty conservative with my money in terms of, do I need this? But I think I'm never afraid to spend money on experiences versus things like I probably buy clothes and shoes in bulk like once every 1 or 2 years. And I just get like a bunch of the same, like I see a good t-shirt that I want, I'm gonna get four of them and I'm good for the next year. But I think I was definitely more, I was spending more, like at the grocery store, at like those like things that you have to spend money on. I wasn't afraid to do that. If I did see, something that I liked, it was like I was making more money than I knew what to do with. My bank account was growing. This is part of the reason why I left because it was just growing and growing and it was like, well, this is cool, but okay. it's just a number. But yeah. And I do want to go back a little bit because this might shed some light a little bit more on this whole thing. Literally yesterday as well, another group of friends asked me if I wanted to go to a Broadway show, and I said no to that one, mostly because like I've never been to Broadway. I'm sure it's great, but I'd rather go to the concert, and it was more money too. I knew there was going to be a train ride involved and probably dinner, and it was just like I can't say yes to two of these things in the same day. Does that make sense? Any other?
It does make sense. It totally makes sense. So you're already doing that values thing, but also I would challenge you to set aside that me money number, and I'm not asking you to budget everything in your life. Just say like this is the amount of money I'm allowed to spend on myself. And if you don't spend it this month, it carries over. So then it builds up if you're not spending it. Because then maybe you would say, you know what? I have never been to a Broadway show. You know,
Hmm.
maybe I'd like to see what that's all about. I value experiences and I want to at least do it once. Maybe I'll love it. Maybe I'll hate it. But, when am I going to have that opportunity again?
Yeah.
So I'm just saying it might allow you to do that, even though I understand. I'm not encouraging you to spend more. I'm
Yeah.
just encouraging you to give yourself some intention around it so that you can allow yourself to do something and not feel guilty about it. It's like I don't know how you felt when you said yes to the concert. Was there still part of you that was going like, oh, I probably shouldn't be doing this,
Um,
or were you okay with it?
definitely a little bit, but I think it was more of, again, it wasn't as much money. Uh, it's one of my best friends that I don't get to see a ton these days, and it's someone we really liked. So again, I think it just all that stuff quickly
Yeah,
in like 2 seconds kind of added up. I did think about it for a second where it was like, I don't know if I really have time for this. It was kind of more of the time aspect because, it was tickets are like $60, and so the money was a factor, but it was also the time of, it's up in Boston. Well, it's a couple days, so there's a lot going on there. But
yeah, yeah,
I think for the normal quarter lifer that is making money, salary, nothing crazy, but like money's coming in the door every month. It's a decent amount. How do you figure out what that number is of that me money? And again, the me money is a line item on your budget, like expenses, money you spend every month, so to speak, that's just purely on yourself, right?
yeah. There's no specific formula. I mean, I do when I in the course I take people through a whole full budget, but it's not necessarily meant for quarter lifers.
Hmm.
But before I even do that, I ask them just to monitor what they're spending on them, what they think they're spending on themselves, and like go through a couple of weeks and see what they're spending day to day, because a lot of times they don't realize how quickly it adds up. You know, whether it's a coffee or a movie or whatever it is, like all the
Hmm.
things that they're
Takeout.
doing for themselves, right? So figure out what that is, and think about the things that benefit like only you that aren't necessities. And maybe for quarter lifers, that's most of their money, right? You might not have rent and utilities and things like that, or you might, but figure out what that is that you're spending on yourself, and then name a number where you can still save and still do some good planning. I want people to be saving from a young age, but figure out what that number is and then try to live within it and see if it's too much or too little as time goes on. And the idea behind it is that it just gives you more intention and lets you have those conversations with yourself about what you value, which is what you're already doing.
Mm.
Without, you probably didn't even realize that's what you were doing, or you probably never
Yeah,
really named it. You just were doing it,
correct.
but it allows you to do that. And I think that a lot of people in quarter life are not doing that. They're not saying like, gosh, if I say yes to this now, I might be saying no to something later. And how much do I really value? Is this worthy of my money for the amount that I set aside for myself? Or should I make a better choice and say no?
Quick interruption. If you're enjoying this episode and you found it valuable, my one ask is that you share it with a friend. I think the only way that this thing really grows and quarter life clarity makes the impact that I believe it can and will have is if people like you take a second to send it to someone, who you think might also find it valuable. If you haven't found it valuable, then that's okay. Like, don't send it to a friend. Enjoy the rest of the episode.
It's also giving the person who maybe saves too much or doesn't spend on themselves, it's also giving them permission to spend on themselves when they maybe want it.
Can you also shed some light on examples of what me money might be spent on? Because I'm just thinking in my brain where I'm sure it's specific to the individual, but I think about like getting takeout with my friends or, playing golf occasionally, going to that concert. Is there like a definition that you would say, okay, this is me money?
Yeah, so I usually all of that would be included because I usually say it's anything that you would that goes only for you and for nobody else. And that's what I'm saying. In quarter lifers, that might be in most of their stuff.
Hmm.
But if you're someone who's thinking about getting ahead or eventually buying a home or getting out of your parents' house or getting an apartment or whatever, think about what those other things would be costing you so that you can start saving for that and start planning for that. Start setting aside like, okay, I'm only going to spend this much on myself because this is what eventually I'm going to want to spend on other things so that you can start saving that aside.
Hmm.
And like for you, the previous you who had the salary, who had all the extra money, it sounds like maybe you didn't have an idea of what that money was for. And so there was probably like, you were like, I don't know what this is for. Like, it's just building up in my bank account.
100%.
But if you think about your future, like that would be fantastic for a down payment on a house or to get you started to get out on your own. Because even if you move out on your own and you get an apartment, guess what? You're going to need to buy furniture and you're going to need to buy other things. And there's going to be all these unknown expenses that you didn't even think about when you make that next step. So getting that little nest egg now is important.
Yeah. No, you hit it on the head. Like I definitely wasn't thinking about, yeah, buying a house, future goals. There was also a lot of fulfillment within the job that wasn't
Right.
there as well, obviously. And so, um, something on that too, I think with just the budgeting side of things, I think that's something that quarter lifers probably maybe most of them aren't doing. I know I got Rocket Money earlier this year. And that's been great. I started off strong for the first couple months, and I don't really look at it anymore. But are there any other, I guess, budgeting tools, apps, ways? I mean, you can obviously do the old-fashioned way where just like pen to paper, Excel sheet, and just track things. But any suggestions for that?
Yeah, I mean, it's really going to depend on where they are at in their life because it at that age, like I think people are all over the board as far as where they're at, right? But like Rocket Money, there's Monarch Money and YNAB. Those are both great apps where you can connect your accounts and see what you're spending and saving. And you start understanding where your money is going better. But I think it's really just going to be depend on where you're at, whether you need that or not. And the me money thing is just a way just to take that one thing and put some intention around it. So you can start what it does is it helps you start understanding how you interact with money too. So I mean, if even if they didn't want to do that, I would say if I could give them one thing to do, it would be just start paying attention to how you feel about money and how you spend money or save money and what the feelings are when you're doing that. Like what I asked you how you felt, like that's a big part of it. People like they have the feelings, but I don't think they ever stop to really think about what feeling they're having or why they're having it. But I think the more that you understand your relationship with money and how you interact with it, like the better it's going to serve you because you'll be like, oh, I know why I did that. Or I know why um, I know I should have done this and I did this. And then you question yourself, say why, and you try to understand it. The more you can understand about that now, it's going to set you up for the more you understand about yourself, you're going to be ahead of the game, ahead of everybody else for your future.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think that, we're talking about money, but that, it applies to everything. It applies to every area of your life too. And I think something that came to mind, again, all this stuff interestingly happened yesterday, but I think something that I try to do with my situation is almost taking the me money concept, but applying it to, okay, well, what are the things that are free that are still fun, like are still me things that I enjoy to do but like aren't killing my bank account. And I think I've this year especially tried to do more of those things. And for example, yesterday was a very stressful day for me. A lot of stuff, overwhelmed, just business stuff, work. I kind of purposely threw myself into this week where I have way too much on my plate and not enough time. And it was just like, how the hell am I going to do all this? And so at the end of the day, every Monday I have a softball game. I decided to play softball this year with a bunch of buddies, and I show up kind of like in a just a mess, so to speak, just overwhelmed, like what am I doing? And then as soon as I get there, I'm with other guys, I'm competing, I'm a sports guy. I loved it. And it was one of those things where I, it's something that I really, really enjoy. It doesn't cost any money and you're also doing it with other people. And so I think that's to spin things a little bit. I think that's how I've tried to do this is, you know, what are those things that I really enjoy and being intentional about doing those things. And it's a plus if they don't cost money, because I think some of my favorite times are hanging out with friends around a fire and that costs zero money,
I
you know?
love that. I love that.
Yeah.
We never did get into the other money personalities, so I know you wanted me to say those. Do you want me to hop over to those now?
Yes, that's literally exactly what I was just going to ask. Yes, good
Okay,
call.
because we kind of got off on a tangent there, but it was a
Yes.
good one. It was a good
Yes, a
one.
little therapy session for me. I appreciate
All right.
it.
So we talked about the avoider, which was what you came out as. You don't like to think about money. It's complicated, boring, or stressful.
Mhm.
You're easygoing, relationship focused, and rarely let money define your choices. And then ignoring money might cost you peace. And then me money can help you reconnect and be intentional without shame or stress. But it sounds to me like you might have, your results might have been an avoider, but I don't think that you're really ignoring it because you know it's there and you are thinking about it.
Hmm.
So I think that it's probably just that you're in that phase right now, like you said, because of where you are on your entrepreneurial journey, that you're in that avoider phase. Because I think that it would stress you out too much if you did think about it.
That's literally it. Is yeah, it's again, it's not necessarily in my direct control, so why even stress about it? Because it's
Yeah.
that's all it's going to do is bring me stress. Yes,
Yeah,
100%.
I get that. Yeah. Okay, so the other ones are a saver. So a saver is someone who's practical, likes to stretch the dollar, loves a good deal, might thrift shop, and they can plan their spending. So this is who I was. And I still am. I shouldn't say was, I still am. So I was the person who could justify buying something when it was on sale, but I would never justify buying a higher priced item for myself. So let's say that I spend $10 on 10 things because I can justify spending $10, but I would never justify spending $100. So instead of now, because I have the money set aside, I know that if I say no to those 10 things for $10, that eventually I can say yes to something for $100 that might be more what I want, right? Than the things that I can justify. So in a sense, I'm not spending any more or less than I was before. I'm just making different choices.
Hmm.
Now, my husband, he was a spender. So he's the one who he likes to enjoy right now. And that's for himself and for others. So, I mean, he's giving person too. Like he spends money on the kids and the grandkids and on himself. It's not just on him. So it's not like he's like all about himself, but he just had no idea like how much money he was spending because I handle all the finances. So by giving him me money, it brought mindfulness to his habits, like not restriction. Because I was worried about that at first, because this is actually how me money came about because I put my husband on a budget. So that's actually how it all started. So after he started doing it, I asked him like, how are you feeling about this? Because I was worried that he would feel like restricted or controlled. And I didn't want him to think like my wife is controlling me and controlling my money. I didn't want him to think that at all.
Hmm.
I just want him to better understand what he was doing. And he was like, no, it's fine. He's like, I'm just making better choices. And I'm like, that's perfect. That's exactly what I was hoping would happen. So it worked for him and it worked for me in completely different ways. And that's actually how Me Money was born, because I was like, wow, this is like powerful. So I started having other people do it, and I found that it worked like for almost anybody and any sort of um, personality that they had. So then there's security seeker. So a security seeker is someone who plans everything, sticks to routines, wants everything to feel safe. They're probably a little bit too like restrictive with their finances. So giving that Me Money number helps them have flexibility and understand that they can do something for themselves without losing their footing, because these people sometimes are too much focused on the future or too much focused on having that security than the ability to enjoy their life now. Like, remember I talked about the people who sometimes like die millionaires, and people are like, I had no idea they lived in, this little shack. And maybe they need to give themselves permission and a place where they have a plan for it so that it makes sense that they can do something to enjoy their life now. And then the last one, risk taker, a visionary, bold ideas, go big or go home, right? I'd rather try than not fail. And this is when spontaneity runs their strategy. And so by putting the Me Money number, it still allows them to do those things, but it gives them a chance to slow down and say, like, is this worthy of my money? So it just gives them that intentionalism and the idea that, okay, if I say yes to this, am I going to say no to something else? And, the money is not endless. So it kind of fits our, everybody kind of falls into one of these. And like I said, you can go back and forth. Now, I'm a saver in my personal life, but with my business, I'm the risk taker. I'm constantly like, yeah, I want to do that. Bam, I'm in. Like, and I'm spending the money because I'm big vision, bold moves. I probably could use some clarity on that, and I could probably set a number for that that's called my biz money or something.
Yeah.
To try to bring myself under control. But it's like, I just want to do it all. I just want to, go big or go home. That's where I'm at. So, I mean, you can be different ones of these in different places in your life, but talking about personal finance mainly is the idea behind the quiz.
Yeah. No, it's so good. And it's funny, I feel the same way about the whole risk taker thing. Like I saw that and I was like, that's definitely me because yeah, with specific to the business, I have no issue spending money on things that I know I need. And sometimes I probably maybe don't need them. I do have that check of do I really need this or how much easier is this gonna make things for me? How much time is it gonna buy me back? All those things. But yeah, I am definitely a risk taker in terms of okay, is this gonna help the business? Because then that really affects the personal, like that gets me closer to my goals that affects me the personal. And I think it's hard as like an entrepreneur to differentiate probably. Again, point for the Me Money.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
And I know I tried to get a number out of you before and I didn't. And I think it might, is there an example we can give in terms of or like a general frame in terms of what that number could be for Me Money? I feel like it comes to how much it starts with like how much excess money do you have like at the end of the month? Like how much are you putting into your savings, so to speak? And then, okay, I know that number. Well, how much then is a good number to spend on me? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I wish I could give you a number or a formula, but it's going to be completely different for every single person. It's going to be different based on what their expenses are and what their income is. Like unless, like I said, what are they putting into savings? What are they not putting into savings? But really, the best way to figure out what it should be is to track what you're spending on yourself and get an idea of what you're spending on yourself. And then also try to figure in those extra things like those concerts and other things that you spend, like, because you want to give yourself a set number every month. So you want to look at the whole big picture and say, like, okay, this is the number. Because the idea is that you need to give yourself a number where you feel like you're making choices, where it's not just like I have got so much that I can just do whatever I want. That's not the idea. The idea is that you want to put intention behind it to make those choices. So you want it to be, a little bit restrictive, but you want it to be empowering, not like restrictive in the sense that you feel like you're not living your life, right?
Hmm. Okay. No, that makes
So,
sense.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think as we're talking, I think it all kind of, I don't know, for me at least, it goes back to, is it worth it? It goes back to that question that everyone I think wrestles with. Is it worth it? And then you unpack that. It's like, what makes me decide if it's worth it or not? It goes back to where we started in the beginning of your beliefs around money and your experiences, your parents, the people you're around, all those things. If it's you're the sum of the five people you spend time with, like their beliefs around money, and if they would say that it's worth it, that's probably going to rub off on you, and you'll probably have a similar response. Again, another point for knowing who you are. I think you can remove yourself from that if maybe the five people are not, and like I've had to do that. Like the five people that I spend the most time with, like their situations are so different than mine. So I have to really, really rely on, well, does this make sense for me? Yeah, my friends are going out and doing these things. Well, I will say yes. I don't want you to yell at me because because I will say yes sometimes, but you do like in the position I'm in, you have to be super mindful of, okay, I don't just want to follow the crowd just because they're doing it. And again, everything goes back to beliefs and where it came from. And when you better understand why you're making those decisions, I think a lot of doors open, not just for your finances, but for every decision that you make.
yeah, absolutely. And I think I'm never going to yell at you. One of my rules is no lectures. There's no lectures because I just want you to understand what you're doing, why you're making decisions. Because if I just lecture you about the decision that you make, I'm not teaching you about how to understand why you did what you did and how you can incorporate your personal beliefs into the way you work with money, right? Because
Hmm.
if you understand why you would do something and how it might be detrimental to you, because I think probably most of the time people know like I shouldn't be doing this, but they're doing it anyway.
Hmm.
It's like, why are you doing that? And are you not thinking about the future you, right?
Yeah.
There's you now, and there's you tomorrow, and there's you next year, and there's you 20 years from now. And some people are just like, I'm just me right now, and they're not worried about tomorrow or next year or 20 years from now.
Hmm.
But you got to think all the versions of yourself.
Yeah, and it's so hard, and I think that's where you need to have grace for yourself. That like no one's gonna get it right. You're not gonna get it right all the time. I saw something the other day. This uh, retired baseball manager. He played in the or he managed in the MLB, and as an experiment, one day he had some kid follow him around and keep track of all the decisions he made on game day, and he had I think 181 decisions made before the game even started.
Yeah,
And the moral of the story, he asked the kid, he was like, "Do you think I got all of them right?" Kid was like, "No, I mean probably not. There's a probably 100% chance that you did not get them all right." And I think that applies in what we're talking about here because just like we talked about earlier, so much information, so many things that you can do, and that person's saying this, and this person's saying this, my friends are saying this, my parents are saying this. It's overwhelming. I think that's where a lot of quarter lifers feel that stress is because we just don't know what to do. We don't know what's true or not. And that's why, again, who you are, and everybody's different. And so I think it's just, again, it's beliefs, it's where all this stuff has come from. And when you can recognize those things better, you just become better at being able to make those decisions. And when you get them wrong, it's like, all right, well, that's just more data to help me make a decision next time. That's all it is. And then you have to have
exactly.
grace for yourself when you do get it wrong.
100%. Yep.
So
So
any, I mean, any other money tips, any other financial stuff? I do want to ask you just general advice for quarter lifers to kind of close, but anything else that you think is important from a money financial standpoint before I ask you that?
I think I've covered all of it, really. I mean, we covered a lot today.
Hmm.
So understanding your relationship, making sure that you're taking care of you today and you tomorrow and you 20 years from now, right? Thinking about all those things. I know it's hard to do when you're young, you're
Hmm.
only a quarter way into your life and you haven't even really started that part of your journey yet a lot of times, but the sooner you start, oh my gosh, even if you're just, socking away a little bit here and there, and you keep that compounding is going to be huge, and you're just going to be setting yourself up for such great success in the future. You're
Hmm.
going to thank yourself. Your future, you will thank yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. No, 100%. I think that's where I sometimes find myself living only for future me. And this is probably obvious, but yeah, I think I struggle more with being present and enjoying where I'm at and like actually enjoying it. Like I can appreciate it, I think, where I'm at. I do that more. I do think there's a difference, but actually enjoying it, and that's where again, the me money, like you talked about, and then, you know, actually just enjoying things. You don't have to spend money to enjoy things. You can go for a walk. You could play softball. You could play tennis. You could play pickleball. Like I'd say sports because I'm a sports
Yeah.
guy, but all this stuff applies.
Yeah, it does.
And so yeah, so final question. I mean, and you could go anywhere with this. I guess somewhat two-parter, but it's kind of the same question. If you could speak directly to your 25-year-old self, what would you tell them? And when I ask people that, the the same sort of question is also, what would your advice be to 25-year-olds? Um, yeah.
It's always the same answer. It's always think bigger.
Hmm.
My world was very small. I was like I was an overachiever, but you can only even an overachiever can only achieve to the level of their mindset. That's a quote from a book that I'm in that I wrote. Like, think bigger, because whatever situation you're in, like, the world is your oyster, and know that you can do whatever you want to do. If you want to do it and you put your mind to it, you can accomplish it. You can accomplish it. And I think that's what you're doing right now, Brian. So keep up the good work.
Thank you, thank you, and same to you too. Yeah, I mean, I think 100%. I mean, I think that's great advice, and that's definitely something that helped me a couple of years ago. Yeah, like I need to do that. Also, again, knowing yourself, I felt like I had something great inside me, as I'm sure you did, to like give to the world. And it's like, well, I want to do that, and my situation right now is I feel like I'm not using the gifts that I've been given in that way. So, like, yeah, let's do this. Awesome. Well, this was an awesome conversation. I appreciate you shedding some light on all things psychology, money, beliefs, who you are. I mean, we went a million different directions today, but it was an awesome conversation. Um, where can people find you? Again, I'll put your website in the show notes, but website, social media, anything like that.
Yeah, the website's the best place to go to. I am on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, but all those links are on my website, so that's probably the best place to go. It's lindagriz.com. Like you said, you'll put it in the notes, but in case you're just listening, LINDAGRIZ.com. And all of my marketing is focused on women, but anybody is welcome to join my courses, or take my quizzes or anything. And so on my resources page will be the quiz. There's a financial confidence quiz along with the money personality quiz. And then there's some other downloads that might be helpful, that just simple financial stuff. But yeah, so thanks so much for having me on, Brian.
Yeah, thank you for joining us.